Hey guys, what's up? It is week 295, and first, before we start this, I want to say R.I.P. Ruggero, Deodato. Now, you guys know these are recorded ahead of time, so technically you'll be seeing this after he's passed for a few days, but Ruggero Deodato is one of my top favorite horror directors. He directed two of my all-time favorites in Cannibal Holocaust and House on the Edge of the Park. I got to meet him at Cinema Wasteland. He seemed very nice. He also directed such classics as, Jungle Holocaust and Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man. He had a good track record, a lot of good movies. Raiders of Atlantis. So R.I.P. Ruggero Deodato. To me, he made the best Italian film of all time. So hey, I know it's very subjective, but it is how I feel. Also, here's some pictures from the Monroeville Mall. I ended up going with some friends, meeting up with JP and Carly as well from 22 Shots Crew, the podcast, and we had a great time. We reenacted a couple Dawn of the Dead pictures. As you could tell, I was bossing everybody around. And I made the mistake of looking the wrong way as Steven. But yeah, anyways, it was a great time. We kind of visited Pittsburgh a little bit. Unfortunately, a Wednesday. Pittsburgh is not the hopping place that we thought it would be. But, the Monroeville Mall was fun. We got to eat at like a local restaurant called Pickers from where JP and Carly are at. And that was pretty good. So the funniest thing is all the time, like Monroeville and Pickers and that local stuff was better than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a lot of rough driving. If anybody's ever been to Pittsburgh, a lot of traffic, kind of crazy driving, stuff like that. So let's hop into the reviews, and the first one up is going to be the Executioner Collection. Now these are Sonny Chiba flicks, actually directed by Teruo Ishii, which is really crazy for let's do the first one, the Execution 1974. Teruo Ishii is a director that's known in the horror group because he did stuff like Horrors of the Malformed Men and a series that he did a bunch of the series of Joys of Torture, Shogun, Split Oxen, those movies that are from the 60s and 70s, the Japanese kind of anthology films. The Arrow put out a handful of them that are basically like these weird torture kind of style films, and they have these crazy openings. So he also did Blind Woman's Curse from 1970, a really good film. So he's more oriented or kind of in the horror genre. So him doing kind of like this action, kind of almost like silly at times movie is pretty strange for him. Obviously, if you guys know anything about like Japanese cinema and studios like Toei and Toho, basically a lot of times you're a gun for hire, you're a director, and they kind of have you in contract, and you kind of do what they tell you to do, and you just do it. And so he's kind of put in to make this movie with Sonny Chiba and a couple other familiar character actor types. They look very familiar, especially the mean guy. And this one is a ragtag kind of group movie, which I really enjoy these. So essentially what we have is Sonny Chiba is like somebody who's been trained like, ridiculous, the typical training montages you see in a lot of, Shaw Brothers films in the very beginning, or, Americanized like Karate Kid, whatever, right? So he learns this very ancient technique, and he's kind of brought along with two other guys that are kind of these wild, crazy characters. One who's basically a moron, wannabe ladies man, and others are like a really stone cold, mean looking guy. He has a great introduction to his moment. He's like playing as an assassin, and somebody offers him more money to kill him. I don't want to explain everything like that, but that's a great opening, a great scene to set who this guy is. So these three are basically hired to shut down the like Japanese drug cartel that's being funded by the American mafia. See, now basically what it is, it's this disgraced cop that's kind of controlling the whole thing, and he can't really do it anymore, so he's kind of like doing it behind the scenes. So these three are basically kind of going to infiltrate and destroy this entire drug ring. But what's really cool, like a lot of like the Street Fighter with Sonny Chiba or the sister Street Fighter films, there's a group of bad guys. There's a bunch, like a rogues gallery of these weird bad guys and villains that all have different styles and different kind of fighting techniques. Also, the Shaw Brothers movies have a lot of those kung fu movies. They all have these kind of bad guys from other different countries, or they're dressed in different styles. So essentially, when like they kind of do this to stop the drug cartel, they run into a bunch of different people, a bunch of different villains, and they have these elaborate fight scenes, all three of them. And there's like slapstick stuff because these three guys have obviously contracting personalities, so they're constantly at each other's throats, a lot of jokes, a lot of laughs. Sonny Chiba is really good in it. In fact, the whole main cast is really charming and fun in it, and it's very enjoyable. As far as the special features are concerned on the first film, what is this little audio thing? Brand new audio commentary by Chris Palaggi and Mark Walco, and that seemed very interesting. They kind of dive into it. Very, very good experts on the subject. And then we have a Sonny Chiba Karate King, a 30-minute featurette on the legendary Sonny Chiba featuring Grady Hendrix, Tom Mex, Chris Palaggi, Marco Yakim, and Sencho Eno from the band Guitar Wolf. If anybody knows, Guitar Wolf is basically in Wild Zero, which is a really fun Japanese zombie kind of crazy film. But they talk about his career and how initially he wasn't in these kind of action films, these kung fu karate films. He was in other stuff beforehand and all this, and how he had the, the Renaissance later on in his career. So that's pretty cool. Anyways, this is a really cool film. And it has some memorable fight scenes that I remember, eyes bulging, some gore. Obviously, with Teruo Ishii, that's going to happen. So this one's really cool and entertaining. So I'd recommend The Executioner. It looks good. It sounds good. You can watch it in English or in Japanese. So that's also a plus. I know a lot of these movies people have seen in Japanese originally, or English, probably originally dubbed over in the States. So the second one here is The Executioner 2, Karate Inferno. Now, I guess the first one was such a hit that they kind of rushed to the sequel and hired Teruo Ishii to do it again. Same year as the first one, 1974. The same cast comes back. All of them, pretty much the 5 main players from the original. The guy who hires them, the girl who sets everything up, and the 3 kind of people that we're familiar with from the first film, including Sonny Chiba. So they all went their separate ways, and they've been living their lives after this big drug cartel run-in. But hey, the mafia is still out there. But there's more to meets the eye. What's basically happening here is there's an insurance company that hires this group to kind of figure out what happened to this jewelry, what was stolen. It's insured for like $1 billion. It was stolen along with a kidnapping. These guys are hired to get it, and of course nothing is as it seems. There's double crossing, there's rich people lying, there's all sorts of things, and the whole movie is about double crossing. This one is more of like a comedy of errors. There's less action, there's less kind of like like those bits of like danger. Doesn't feel very dangerous at all. It's very lighthearted and silly and goofy. Now there's some fun stunts, of course, but it's more like definitely in the adventure category than the action gore category until like the last 10 minutes or so, and then we pick up and we have like shooting. We have this great rooftop battle of people getting chucked off the roof and just violence and shooting and stuff, and it feels a little out of place for this because the movie's kind of really tame and goofy and silly in comparison to the first film. I mean, the first film does have its moments, but the second one almost becomes like a lighthearted farce where they had like almost like they were trying to do like a television show with this, like these 3 characters kind of like having these misadventures all the time, and this one just doesn't land as well as the first one. It's pretty cool, but for a movie called Executioner 2, Karate Inferno, there's a whole lot of not execution going on, and it's not really that much of a Karate Inferno, but it's an alright film, and it's nice to have the sequels together. Regardless, it's a nice package. Sonny Chiba is an awesome looking character, and a martial artist kind of style, action star, and I enjoy him. He's got a nice chiseled look, and all the characters are really fun. There's like more goofiness and on PC humor that's dated. I wouldn't even call it that, but like ugly wife kind of stuff. Typical humor from like anywhere before 2005, right, is there. But anyways, The Executioner from Arrow, I would recommend checking these out if you're interested. The first one especially, so yeah. You know what, instead of jumping into the 2022 releases, I'm just going to do the Patreon pick right off the bat. And I can't remember who picked this one. Tom Brooker. It sounds like a Tom Brooker pick. I know what he does. And this is from like 2008. This is from the Dimension Extreme line, and this is Triloquist. And ventriloquist is easy, but Triloquist is such a weird word to say because it's not really a word. They're just shortening ventriloquist. So basically, this is by the director Mark Jones. That's his name. Is that Mark Jones? I think that's his name. Mark Jones. It's the director of the original Leprechaun and Rumpelstiltskin. So this is about a dummy, which is weird. You kind of catch this guy's MO. He did Leprechaun 1 in like 92 or something. He did, Rumpelstiltskin in the mid 90s, and now he does Triloquist in 2008. Now this definitely has the flair of like 2008. It's heavily inspired by like stuff like Devil's Rejects or those kind of like extreme weird kind of silly films. It does feel cheap. Like, it's kind of strange, it feels very cheap and very, like, kind of purposely, like, hammy acting in a lot of ways and self-aware kind of style, almost in a vein of something like Satan's Little Helper, like, just this bizarre sense of humor and on-PC nonsense and goofiness. And now it is a little cheap looking, and I said a little bit like, oh, what is going on here? Acting is purposely kind of patchy, I would imagine. I feel like everyone's in on the joke, but the movie does have its own sense of charm. So essentially what we have here is a brother and sister whose mother kills themselves. So they come from a long line of ventriloquists. Basically, they're left with the dummy. The dummy seems to have magic power. The family's always talking about magic. And the way they handle this, it seems that most of the time the dummy's doing its own thing and moving around, but a lot of people, when they're watching, it's doing things. But when people are murdered by the dummy and by the family, it seems like there, is definitely something supernatural. But of course, it is, unreliable there, whatever they want to do, but there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this film. Basically, I would say that the person who steals the show is his sister. She has all the most ridiculous, best lines, lots of crazy on PC shit, because she's like this really sexually active young girl who seduces men and then like also says ridiculous things. There's points when she's like chomping on these chili dogs and she starts talking to these cops even though they're in a stolen car with somebody kidnapped in the back and all sorts of stuff like that. Where like it's just she's always pushing the buttons and everything, and they're like pitting the dummies, always saying things about her, and the brother is completely silent. And there's just a lot of funny moments where she like pins all the things on the brother, which really works well. Yeah, this one is short. It's 80 minutes long. It kind of trucks along in its weird kind of fever dream state of insanity and goofiness and bizarreness. Like, I don't even know where to go about this. It is kind of oversexed too. I wouldn't say like it's super like like a bunch of sex scenes, but there's a lot of nudity in here, and it seems like, yeah, we'll get some nudity in for the crowd. It's a bizarre film. Now, do I 100% love it? I do enjoy it. I think it's goofy, but I think it does have some flaws. Most of that is in the budget and just the way it's made in like 2008 and stuff, and the techniques and what it's inspired by. It's definitely very much a product of its time, as probably a lot of the Dimension Extreme line is. And I remember a bunch of these. I'm looking at my shelf right now. We had 13 Game of Death, Automan Transfusion, Black Sheep, Broken, Buried Alive, Dead in 3 Days, Eden Lake, Feast 2 and 3, Inside, Killing Gene, Mother of Tears, Nightmare Detective, Rogue, Steel Trap, Storm Warning, Teeth, Welcome to the Jungle, Wizard of Gore Unrated, Zombie Diaries, and there was a slew of other ones that I do not have, but that's one along with Triloquist. But if this sounds like it's up your alley, I would recommend it. It's very bizarre, very goofy, very strange, very, very silly. Okay, let's get into the 2022 movies. And to be brutally honest, a lot of these newer ones, I don't have as much to say for fear of spoilers, or some of them, they're good, they're fine, but I don't have like these in-depth reviews for them. The first one up is a Saloum, I believe is how you'd say it, probably mispronounced. It's on Shudder, and this one I had heard some buzz about. A lot of people were saying it's kind of in a Western style. So basically what we have here is these three mercenaries, and we're during this like violent conflict where these three guys are kind of going about, and they're basically mercenaries hired by the person with the biggest wallet. And what they're doing is during this like turmoil in these third world countries, they're trying to get this drug trafficker out and deliver him to the drug cartel for a ridiculous amount of money. But on the way there, all three of them have their own kind of unique things about them. One is kind of like a magic, kind of like uses potions and dust and stuff, and one's like a big strong guy, and one is just like kind of like the leader, level-headed type. So these three are kind of the mercenaries, and they're kind of carrying this drug kind of guy, this drug pusher, this big kind of like cartel leader, to deliver him to the cartel so he doesn't get arrested by the cops or whatever and whatnot. So their plane, there's something wrong with their plane when they're trying to escape. There's a lot of damages, so they have to land in this weird kind of isolated village, and the village is ran by this strange guy, and there's a lot of strange characters there, one of which is deaf, that has like a secret, and all these people have little secrets and things like that. And what you find out is that some of these people have a past with some of the other characters, and it's all going to intermingle. And about the halfway mark, we realize that this is not necessarily kind of like a crime mercenary war film. This is more so kind of like a horror supernatural element going on, and it's kind of like a survival siege movie in a lot of ways. And it's decent, it's solid. There's some fun action, there's some cool concepts, and the idea that it takes place in a lot of geographical locations that are not too similar. They're not very similar, or we're not, a lot of westernized audience aren't used to this, especially seeing them in film, and especially seeing a lot of the kind of characters, what countries they're from, and dealing with a lot of horrible war acts and war crimes and things like that. I mean, there's plenty of horror to be made from those. I mean, there's so many countries that are constant conflict or war crimes. There's just tons and tons of it. So like seeing this was pretty cool in a lot of aspects, and I like the villain, or the main like kind of antagonist. I don't want to spoil exactly what's going on there, but I thought that was pretty neat and pretty cool. The characters are fairly solid. The intermingling between the characters is nice. It's in a kind of nice location, so that's all going for it. It's on Shudder. I say give it a watch. If you're in 15-20 minutes, it's not your thing, then tune out. But I think it's worth maybe checking out. I think a lot of people will enjoy it a little bit more than I did. I did like it though. It's pretty cool. Okay, the next one is another Shudder film, and this is The Spine of Night. Now, like I said, this is horror adjacent. It's not really horror. It's more like a fantasy kind of medieval kind of style thing, Dungeons and Dragons style. So horror adjacent, if you will. So it's animated, and it's kind of done in like the rotoscoping, which is an old school thing like heavy metal, if I'm not mistaken, or rock and roll. I don't want to, animation's not my strong point. It's not my forte, although I do like it. So The Spine of Night, I popped this in, and I was watching it, and I was immediately hooked. It kind of has like this story of like this woman that like worships like this I don't even know, the bloom, and the bloom is kind of the livelihood of Mother Nature in a lot of ways, but we learn later what this is, and it's way more important than that, way more in depth than that, and it's really awesome. So essentially what we have here is she is brought in by this evil king played by Patton Oswalt. Lucy Lawless actually plays the barbarian woman, which is perfect, and Patton Oswalt as this disgruntled kind of like king or lord is great as well. So basically he wants to burn the bloom and everything like that and take it for himself and whatnot. whatnot. But we also have this, scholar who shows up. And, like I say, knowledge is power, and power is all consuming, right? So basically what we have here is people double crossing it, and we end up with a scholar who has this ridiculous amount of power within the bloom. And it kind of consumes him, and he decides to do this rampage. He becomes one of the great villains of the year. He is terrifying. He is awesome. He has wonderful lines. Although a bit predictable, they are dead on perfect. He has like a Skeletor or an Emperor vibe going on, just like that absolute power consuming moment. He's basically like when Skeletor in Master Universe 1987 gets like the golden. He's like, I can feel the universe flowing through me. He's basically like that all the time with his glowing blue eyes. But there's these great set pieces here where like one of the scholars, the lower than him, gets like taken over a different, and he just like completely goes ballistic. It's very gory. The battle scenes acted are really strong and really violent, and they seem fairly realistic. And you'll have characters that are very strong and they're very tough, and they'll go through like 3 or 4, do these feats of amazing strength and violence and agility and kill a bunch of people, and you're like, oh, they're untouchable, and then they'll get fucked up and die, and you're like, oh shit. It's like everything feels, even like the gods and the powerful people of the universe feel like they can be hurt. They feel like there is, a grounded level to the fantasy, which I really liked. I love the music, I love the score, I love the acting. Richard E. Grant is in here, from Hudson Hawk, Mayflower. He plays one of the Mayflowers. He's in a bunch of movies, Gosford Park. So he plays like the voice of the old guardian who's supposed to guard the bloom and all this kind of stuff. And it's basically the whole story is being told by Lucy Lawless and Richard Grant. Like they're going back and forth, Richard E. Grant telling the whole story of everything. And we get the backstory of how the bloom was created, which is wonderful. And it's just such a rich mythology. And the ending is great. I love the ending. I love the, the characters. It's just perfect. It's an awesome medieval epic film. It's one of my favorite movies I've watched this year. I'd really recommend The Spine of the Night. This is really good stuff. On Shudder, highly recommended. If you're a Dungeons and Dragons fan, if you're a role-playing fan, if you're a medieval fantasy fan or anything like that, I think you'll eat this up. I think it's perfect. Okay, the next one is Speak No Evil. Now, I can't remember exactly what country this is from, Scandinavian. It deals with Dutch and Danish people. So essentially, this one I've heard a lot of buzz about. It's on Shudder, and some people are making jokes like, Dave's going to hate this movie, because the movie Coming Home in the Dark, I felt like it was just unrealistic. I felt like it depicted human beings inaccurately and stuff like that. It just bothered me, and there was a whole joke about it on 22 Shots where I was just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't buy it. Now this one I don't have the same problem with. Speak No Evil. Eventually, it kind of follows the story of two couples, and they meet on alien vacation, and like they kind of hit it off. And then one day they get this note, the couple, the kind of more subdued couple, and their daughter, hey, come with us in our country and hang out for a bit. So they end up deciding to go reluctantly. The husband seems to want to live more outgoing, and you see like this idea that these two, the husband and wife here, are more subdued, and the wife is very kind of uptight, more so than the husband. And they go here and they expect this family is nice and everything, but they're different. And it's definitely a clash of basically cultures. But I will say this, and they make jokes about their culture being more similar to other cultures' similarities and stuff like that. And I've heard other people like Duncan McLeish on Podcast Understairs talked about this, and he said it's kind of a movie about manners and being polite, how much that can get you in trouble and how far it can go. And if you give somebody an inch, they'll take a mile. And that kind of starts to happen here. And at first it doesn't seem right. They're vegetarians, but they keep serving meat, and they take them places they don't want to go, and they're more affectionate in public. And some of the stuff you think, oh, it's mistakes, or it's not that big of a deal here or there. But as it progresses, things get completely out of hand until something is obviously found out. And when that reveal happens, things get very scary. Now, the problem I don't have with this movie is that there's certain people that are alive, is why other people are listening to what the characters are saying, if that makes any sense. There is a sense of leverage, although it does seem a little far-fetched at the very, very end of these people doing that. But the way it happened, the way it unfolded, the way it was done seems a little bit more realistic than the other film, if that makes any sense. It just, the way the characters would be beaten down and react the way they do, although there is still some leverage over their head, which makes sense to me. But anyways, it's a very bleak, a very dark, a very, people under the stairs kind of style story in some ways, which you don't really expect. It's well shot, it's well acted, it's very uncomfortable. I would recommend checking this out. I think a lot of people will love this. I think it's a great movie. It's just not something that would make my personal top 10, but I do objectively think it's a very strong film, and I do see this making a lot of people's top 10. Speak No Evil. Good stuff on Shudder. Really recommended. Okay, the next up is Piggy. So Piggy is from Magnolia. This is a new one as well, and it is a Spanish film. And if anybody follows Elric Kane, he does All Colors of the Dark podcast, and he said this is basically Fat Girl meets High Tension, and I wouldn't disagree with that. If anybody's ever seen the French film Fat Girl or the French extreme film High Tension, they both are very very dark subjects, especially Fat Girl, and I could see this. So what we follow is this overweight girl in this like Spanish village where her father and her mother and her little brother, little brother doesn't work there, but they all work in this like butcher shop, this place like that, and a lot of people don't really visit there, and she's really overweight, like extremely overweight. Her whole family is overweight. It kind of seems like a lifestyle for them in a lot of ways, and essentially she's always picked on. There's a group of kids like her age, her contemporaries, that always mess with her. There's one that's kind of friendly with her, kind of not. That they used to be kind of like, you seem like they used to be on better terms than they were, and maybe her friends guilted her into being nice, that kind of thing. So one day she goes to the swimming pool, which is I love how the swimming pool's laid out. I love all the small villages and how it looks and everything like that. It's gorgeous. It's a really great location, and it's well shot, and well acted and everything like that. And the relationship that I say Piggy, Sarah, the character, has with her mom and her dad and her brother is really unique and really different, and just like really dark. And you can just feel really bad for Sarah because the way she's treated by every individual in this town, the way people look at her, the way her life is in general. So one day she's swimming, and she like kind of passes this strange gentleman that you've seen a little bit earlier. He's in the pool. Maybe this is his first appearance. But basically, she is picked on immensely in this really horrific way. And I don't want to spoil everything, but somebody that doesn't normally belong to this town, that's kind of messed up, and witnesses it, and he takes a liking to Sarah. And this creates this weird relationship between this monster character and Sarah, who has a lot of these problems and a lot of animosity towards her family and these people in the village who pick on her. We have this guy who obviously is a damaged murderer, and he has this affection for Sarah. So it creates this weird relationship in the most fucked up way. Now, when the violence is there, it's pretty violent, and I just think it works really well. I think this is a really strong film. I think it's pretty good. I think it's actually one of my favorites of the year, top 15 for sure. I just thought it worked really well. I thought the story was really strong, how it unfolded, the acting, the relationships between all the characters is really well done, and everything about it. I think that it ends in a really nice area, but I think that the first half is a stronger film. I think it's just a stronger film. I think that there's a lot of suspense. I think that there's a lot of good characters, like I said, and I think that the way things unfold, and you really don't know what Sarah's going to do. And it's a really tragic story. It's a really sad story when you look at it in a lot of ways, that the idea that the person who's the nicest to you is a violent killer, that the person who might have been the best to you and the sweetest to you is, in fact, a monster, but in a lot of ways, they have that soft side to them. Anyways, Piggy, I'd really recommend checking it out. I'm sure if this sounds like it's up your alley, if you're into the French extreme films, although this is Spanish, I think that you will find some time for it. I thought it was quite good, actually, so it's Piggy. I know this has been kind of like a short week and everything. It's not a huge week for me because there's just not much, I was out of town a lot, so the next one up, I apologize, that is The Hatching. So this is Hatching. I believe it's on Hulu, if I'm not mistaken. And this is it a German film? I'm going to get it all mixed up. I can't 100% say. But you know what? So basically what we have here is this picturesque family where we have a mother, a father, a son, a daughter. And we kind of follow the daughter around. She's in gymnastics. Her mother obviously is pushing her to be in gymnastics. And right in the beginning, we have one of these mothers who films her family all the time, and everything has to be this perfect, wonderful, picturesque family. But in reality, you can obviously see underneath the levels that it's not really there. And this is really interesting to me to watch this one because I've been listening to podcasts something underneath, and at one point they covered like all these like parents who do that to their families and their kids, and they exploit their kids to make a lot of money and then like basically there's a lot of perverts watching it, and they're just like pushing their kids to extreme levels, filming their emotions, and it's kind of like the line of Cannibal Holocaust. How would you like somebody to make money off your misery, right? And that's kind of here's what's happening, but it's fucked up because it's your parents and you really don't have a say in it because you're underage. So it's kind of like she's just filming constantly, putting the pressure, and nothing's ever good enough for the mother, although she has this fake smile on her face, and like it seems like this perfect family, but in reality she has like somebody on the side and another kid on the side. So one day there's this they're filming a segment, and this black crow flies in house and causes a ridiculous amount of damage. It seems a little injured, and the mother kills it, or so you think. And then that night, the daughter realizes, that the crow had crawled out from the garbage and has wandered into the woods, and it's crawled next to an egg and it's struggling. And she takes pity on the creature and destroys it pretty violently. But she can't leave the egg by itself. So she starts to nurture this egg. And of course, we have this weird kind of doppelganger story, this weird kind of, a story where there's this little creature that is partially connected to you in a lot of ways, right? That this creature, if you're hurt, it'll lash out on the person that hurt you. Think The Brood, right? But it also has the idea of, what was that, Der Nightmare, the German film where we had that little creature that's out and about, and can people see it or not? And you kind of start to get this weird kind of head game as the bird thing, it grows and it grows and grows. It starts to look more and more human as the film progresses, while it starts to lash out on people that possibly hurt her or possibly are affecting her, her station in life. So it's a pretty interesting film. It's well made, it's well shot, and it's really dark. The ending is really dark, kind of surprisingly dark, but this is a good film. I think most people will enjoy Hatching. I think it's definitely worth watching, and I would recommend it. But it's a story that we have seen. It does have some unique touches and flares about it, and I like the element of adding in that parent, those parents that are filming and exploiting their families, so a lot of people can, get views and get this fake bullshit, status that they don't have. Okay, the next one up from 2022 is You Won't Be Alone. Now, this one was getting a lot of rave reviews, and I can see why. It's gorgeously shot. It's probably one of the best shot movies I've seen this year. It's on film, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like it is on film. It's in full screen, or box screen, what everybody calls it. It's in full screen. I believe it's on film. It's a gorgeous looking movie. I can't think what country exactly it's from. It's a period piece as well. And what we have here is, early in the very beginning of the movie, we have this woman, her newborn child is taken by this skinless witch, this very burnt witch, and she says, listen, and she said, pleads and pleads and pleads, and says, please let me have my daughter until she's 16. And the witch agrees to a certain point, but marks her with a special mark. And this obviously does something to her. But when the time comes, the witch shows up. And the witch has this unique power where she can, take something from someone and become them. Like, she can turn into them by like kind of destroying them and whatnot. And she can also kind of pass on her thing that she has. They call her, what do they call her? Wolf eater. The villagers will call this person like a wolf eater. So basically, essentially what we have here is this young girl is taken in by this witch when she's 16, and she doesn't really have a look at life because she was hidden. She doesn't understand anything. And as the witch teaches her ways, these ways of survival with eating like animals or anything like that, and kind of like taking over and like having to intermingle with these people, even if it means killing some of them to become them for a short period of time. So basically, at one point, her sweetness, her on desire to kill upsets the witch, and the witch tells her to leave. So she kind of has to go fend for herself, and we kind of have those kind of weird stories where like you have like kind of a person that's an outsider in a lot of ways, kind of like intermingling into society and learning about humans through becoming like, or having to act like humans and see how they're treated through the the eyes of another person, seeing that kind of like Under the Skin or Hard to Be a God, these kind of weird stories where you're traveling around and seeing a lot of things. It does remind me, it's more like Under the Skin, but it does feel like Hard to Be a God, or what was the one, the Black Bird or something along those lines. I can't remember the name of it. It was a very strange film. Eureka put it out, and it was a really good one too. It had Uday Kier in it, and it was the Painted Bird, where like you're just kind of like traveling across and being all these different people and meeting all these different characters. So what happens is this girl starts to learn humanity through being a man, through being a woman, through all these kind of things, and through that we also learn the story of the witch, how she became burnt, who she was, and we also learn that sometimes it's not always a nurture and nature thing. It's just weird. I don't want to say which one it is, but sometimes it's easier for people to be accepted or to adapt than other people. And it's just like, what is the question? Why? Maybe there's good nature in some and not as good nature in others, or it is what it is, right? And it's just a unique little thing there, and she maybe had learned something about humanity more than the original witch had. But yeah, it's a well shot, well made movie. It has a lot of good camera angles. It's a beautiful looking movie, beautiful location. It says a lot of things. This one is a movie that I think most people with like I love artistic or artsy films will dig. I liked it. It's not something that I'll go back to very often. I don't think that's the problem with it. I prefer Under the Skin. But this one I think could, you really be on people's top 10. It's You Won't Be Alone. I rented this on Amazon. Yeah, and it's in 4K, so it looks really strong. So if it sounds like it's up your alley, check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed, honestly. Okay, questions and answers and comments. Kankoku, hope you have a great Christmas and have a healthy, prosperous, I don't know why that word is tongue-tying me today, New Year. I spent Christmas watching weird Christmas movies as well as the original Black Christmas, which Elvis loved so much that he owned a 35mm print of the film. Very cool. Anyways, this is regarding with sports movie you should watch. Rollerball or Slapshot, they're both great films but very different for each other. Slapshot is a laugh riot and makes me nostalgic for the days when hockey was a tough guy sport with lots of fights. I watched this every year when my beloved Boston Bruins lost in the playoffs. Rollerball, on the other hand, is a dark and thought-provoking. James Caan is great in the movie. Another sports film I recommend is 1973 baseball drama called Bang the Drum Slowly. It's about the relationship between a dying catcher played by Robert De Niro and his friend and teammate played by Larry Cohen mainstay Michael Moriarty. Jeff 1999. I hope 2023 is the best year yet. Thank you for all the work you put into your channel. Your videos are a bright spot in these strange and depressing times we live in. Taken by Madness. Dang, you're very knowledgeable about films, actors, and directors. I enjoy your content and podcast. Jay, happy holidays. The Innocents is probably my favorite horror film of the year. Very cool. Travis Linscomb, happy holidays, Dave. I hope you have a good time off. Thank you. David Leather. Thing I find amazing about Strickland is that you are watch it. You must keep in mind that life is stranger than fiction, and that there are mirrors he's trying to hold up to give us the indication. Got to go. Just shit myself. Yeah, his films are strange. I don't think they're bad. It's just sometimes I miss the mark on them. 10 Room Bizarro. Love you, Mrparka. How has your hearing been? You're an inspiration. You're an inspirational man. Thank you very much, 10 Bizarro Room. If you don't know, he does a podcast. I mean, he does YouTube reviews as well, and he loves films. He's a very nice, sweet guy. My hearing has been, iffy. I've kind of learned to ignore it and live with it, so. Christopher Muller, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you and yours. You are awesome, and I've been watching you for years. Keep up the great work, Dave. Thank you. Scott S. Jackie Chan went to martial arts school where he learned the art of comical choreographing, according to the documentary I watched. Very cool. Martine VP, Merry Christmas and Happy 2023. Ken Cogley, I hope you have a great Christmas and have a healthy... Oh, he already posted that. And he says, a little Christmas horror fun fact. Elvis Presley's favorite film was Black Christmas. Okay, I think I already did that one. Petri Lambala. By the way, have you seen The Innocents from 1961? I think it's my favorite horror film of all time. It's a great film. Yeah, I covered that on here. David Leather just puts a little muscle thing. And Jesse Bard, if you liked My Man Godfrey, you should try watching the Man series, Thin Man series with William Powell and Mira Loy. Their characters later to be parodied in A Murder by Death by David Niven and Dame Maggie Smith. Sounds very cool. So, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to get into the update here because it's rather small. It's not a huge update. Just a couple titles here. First and foremost, for Christmas, someone was nice enough. Actually, Jeremy got me this, and it is The Running Man on 4K, the Steelbook. I absolutely adore The Running Man. If you guys don't know, it's one of my favorite Arnold movie. If not, I think it is. Love the source material too, even though it's not very similar. But this is a great film. Adore it. The Running Man. Next up is Smile. 4K is Smile. I thought this was a really good movie. I definitely want to revisit it. Pretty scary stuff for mainstream kind of horror film. I know people are like, oh, I don't like the jump scare. Whatever. I thought it was really good for what it was. And last up is another movie that was pretty crazy. Terrifier 2. This is the 4K, the Best Buy exclusive. Another kind of crazy, intense, gory movie that surprisingly made it to theaters. All three, I think, are definitely worth watching, of course, and especially The Running Man, of course. Ben Richards. I put my money on Ben Richards. He's one mean motherfucker, of course, right? Anyways, Terrifier 2. So, yeah, anyways, let's get out of here. And we're going to cut to that weird thing I do every single video. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one. Me.